Hello, and welcome to Global Azure Day 1, Global Azure 2022. This is my second of 5 sessions that I'm streaming today on behalf of Global Azure, as well as the user group I co-organize, Gimme Cloud Talks. My first session earlier today was on path to security certifications. The rest of my sessions today are not going to be specifically on certifications. They're going to be specifically on some technologies, starting with right now zero trust testing and conditional access with what if. So we're going to talk a little bit briefly about zero trust, and then how conditional access enforces zero trust, and then we're going to go into a demo. It might only go about 30 minutes or so, but certainly, hopefully, you can get some value out of this. This was I originally had done this as a lightning talk. But I'm going to expand the conversation a little bit here today. Feel free to post any questions or comments in the comment section on your live stream, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter, and I will try to get to those if they come across on my StreamYard. I will answer those as I finish the presentation, and if there's any comments that come after our live stream is over, I'll certainly make sure to answer them. So let's jump in. My name is Dwayne Natwick. If you don't know me, I'm Microsoft MVP, as well as a Microsoft Certified Trainer Regional Lead. Do a lot of trainings and talks on security, compliance, and identity, as well as I have multiple Microsoft certifications. I have my CISSP. I've written 2 books for Pact Publishing, the first of which, Microsoft Identity and Access Administrator, is available now on Amazon and Pact Publishing site, as well as the SC 900, the Fundamentals exam prep guide is available for pre-order on those platforms, and will start shipping in June of 2022. Feel free to follow me. I do have a blog site as well as my social media. LinkedIn and Twitter are what I utilize on the social media platforms. So feel free to join in. One quick thing on my Captain Hyperscaler URL that I just noticed on this page. If you're going to captainhyperscaler.com, do not use HTTPS. That URL will fail out, but if you use HTTP, captainhyperscaler.com, it will redirect to the secure GitHub Pages site that I now host my website on. So let's talk. We're going to talk about the zero trust principles, the elements of zero trust, and then conditional access policies. And then we're going to get into the Azure Active Directory portal and show how we create and can test a conditional access policy using the what if feature. So what is zero trust? Key things about zero trust and the key principles of zero trust are that we need to verify explicitly that somebody is who they say they are. Trust no one, continuously verify and everything. And so that's, as we're authenticating and using our resources and getting on and trying to access resources on Azure or Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, SharePoint, we want to make sure that our data is protected and everything that is within the infrastructure of accessing that data is also protected, and we want to make sure that only people that are authorized to access that data can access that data, and that could be internal resources as well as external resources. It's least privilege access, making sure that we aren't making everybody global administrator. We want to make sure that they have just in time and just enough access. The principles of least privilege, is really that just enough access. Just in time access, there are ways that we can do that, and we're not going to talk about that in this conversation. I am doing a talk on modern authentication later on today that I talk a little bit more about privileged identity management as far as governing over your Azure Active Directory and governing over that just-in-time and giving just-in-time privileges. There are other areas within our endpoints for our virtual machines using just-in-time virtual machine access, so we aren't exposing management ports like 3389 for RDP or 22 for SSH. Assume a breach. We want to segment our access and our networking to avoid breaches, but we want to put controls in place that we're going to assume that somebody can break through, and control and monitor all of that so that we have the visibility and the detection on that. And again, we'll talk more about Microsoft Defender for Cloud in another one of my talks today as well, and how we can do that monitoring and management of our Azure and even our multi-cloud and hybrid environments using Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Sentinel. The various elements. There are 6 elements to Zero Trust. We talk a lot about identities, and conditional access really falls into that identities area of things, but we need to protect other things as well. We've got devices, we've got applications, we've got our data at the center of it all. If you attended my previous session when I was talking about security certifications, I brought up the defense in depth, defense in depth within our environment, and defense in depth becomes very important to how we're going to protect our data and govern over our data, and we want to have zero trust capabilities around that. We want to have our infrastructure protected. We want to protect our networks and all of those areas as well. So we're going to continue to do that and continue to enforce that as part of a zero trust methodology. And conditional access policy, like I said, is one of those aspects and really focuses on the identity area. And that's what we're focusing here in this talk. But I wanted to just kind of give everybody an idea that when we're saying zero trust and zero trust methodologies and principles, we're not just talking about identity. We're talking about really all of those lines around zero trust and around our defense in depth. Having zero trust across all of our areas of defense in depth is where what we're talking about and where we're coming across. So, conditional access policies enforce that identity and access verification and control, and that just in time, just enough access along the lines and means of by looking at the conditions of our devices, of our users, of our applications, and then through those conditions, we trigger what level of access control and access verification and approval we're going to go through to provide then the access and the authorization to our cloud apps and actions. And those policies can be written in a multitude of ways. They can be enforcing multi-factor authentication, enforcing levels of forcing our password, forcing maybe password resets, forcing our devices to be compliant, and maybe just blocking access, or maybe we're putting something in certain terms of a trusted location in place, and we are going to just give access to our users if they are in a trusted location on a device that's compliant, and all of those things to access our environment. So those are all those capabilities and all those resources, and really the workflow of zero trust for identity utilizing conditional access policies. And rather than talking about it, let's take a look ourselves at how that works and how we are going to really then test it out once we create it. So I'm in conditional access already here, but if I was to go home, and you can see it's here in my quick services, but if I was to just do conditional as a search, you can see conditional access policy services just pop right up. So we're gonna select that there. We'll use these policies here that I already have created as means for testing our what if policy, but I'm going to step through just kind of creating a policy here quickly for everyone. So we're going to create a new policy. You've got some templates that are in preview now. That's fairly new. If you wanted to create and have some templates, there's some identity and device templates here. I'm not going to worry about that. There's also some templates as well if you've worked with Microsoft Defender for cloud apps, there's some policies that you can create within there as well, that are templatized for access and access to cloud apps and things like that within the Defender for Cloud Apps portal. But we're working in the Azure AD portal right now. We're going to create a new policy in here. We're going to we'll just name it Global AZ policy. And we're going to look at our users and work identities, and we can go in here. I'll just go ahead. You can do users and groups, and you can select certain users. I'll do all users here. And what I'll do here, since I'm global administrator, what we want to make sure we do when we create our policies is make sure any global administrators are excluded from policies that might lock them out. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select myself so that I don't lock myself out. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is turn this on and enforce this. It's in my demo environment. But if you did enforce this and you have a global administrator in here, you want to always make sure your global administrators are excluded from policies just to avoid lockout if necessary, especially and if you're using break glass accounts, which we're not talking about in this session either. But if you're using break glass or emergency accounts, they also should be excluded from conditional access policies and multi-factor authentication also, so that they can always bypass any of these policies and these capabilities. So all users except for myself being a global administrator, we're going to go in here with our apps. And let's just do selected apps here. Let's do Office 365, and let's find something else. Let's do we'll just add Stream to that as well. So we'll select those two applications. So we're setting up our assignments. We need to set up our conditions now. So if we remember from the previous slide where we were looking, okay, we've got our really what we did here with our apps and users is the apps are that last portion. So if I let me go back to that slide real quick. The cloud apps here is what we've determined in terms of the cloud apps and actions. We've determined that in our process. We determined our users, but we can also we also need to determine other conditions as well that we might require. So we're going to go in here and we can see here, these really go into align with those different areas of platforms and user risk, sign-in risk, certain apps, locations, and different devices. So let's go in here for devices, and we're gonna configure our devices here. Actually, this is a little bit different. Actually, we're not gonna do filter for devices. Let's actually device platforms. That's what I was looking for. So we're going to configure device platforms. Let's select iOS for this one and iOS only. I'll show why I'm doing that in a moment with this one. But you can see we can do any device and enforce this for any particular device, or we can do it for Android, Windows Phone, Windows, Mac, or Linux in here. So we could enforce this for any device. I'm gonna do iOS. I already have an Android-based policy in here, so I'm going to kind of avoid any conflicts there and do done. If I want to look at locations, if I wanted to exclude a certain location, I can configure that. And you'll be able to see that I have a couple trusted locations. So I'll say company headquarters for that one. If I want to look at any client apps, again, user risk. If I want to look at user risk, if it's at high or medium, I'm gonna worry about that. Sign-in risk, high or medium. I'm not gonna worry about low or no risk. We can configure those, and then after that, we're going to this is the middle section of that workflow of what that access control is going to be. And what are we going to do? And the first and foremost is the grant. Are we going to just block access completely if they're on an iOS device? Are we going to grant access but require multi-factor authentication, and maybe also require the device to be marked as compliant? So we want to make sure that iOS is on our Intune and registered on Intune. So, and you can see, don't lock yourself out. Make sure that you have a compliant device, or I've excluded myself. So I'm going to worry about that. And you can say, we can require both of these controls to be in place, or we can require only one of those controls. I'm going to leave it at both for this one. So for an iOS device, I'm going to require that user to re-verify who they are with multi-factor authentication, as well as that device be marked compliant before I allow them to go through. So we're going to select that. And you can see, we may prompt users to select a device certificate. So this would be, we're going to proceed with that requirement. And another thing that we can put in here is a session. So we allow them to have persistent browser sessions. So once they've verified who they are, they can verify and can go further. They can continue to not be verified, and we can set here where we can set that session up for a number of hours that they aren't required to re-verify themselves. So if their browser session is persistent, we would know that that they have already verified themselves to allow access. I'm not going to worry about any of these session criterias right now. Yeah, that's okay. And as you can see, this is going to require a user that is not, oops, that popped me through. This is going to require a user that is not registered with their iOS to have a device certificate and have that all registered before this policy will work on them. Now, what we want to do here is we don't want this to be off. We don't want to turn this on yet because we don't know how it's going to act in our environment with our users. So we'll put it on report only at first. Really no reason to put it on off unless we've found a problem with the policy and we need to turn it off. There's really no reason to put it on off when we create it. But if we turn it on and it creates issues, we might want to turn it off, or we find duplicity in our policies, then we can turn it off. Report only is a good place to put it, because now when users it really monitors and allows us to see what users are doing and what's going on in our environment. So we're going to proceed with the selected criteria, and we're going to report only, and we're creating our global Azure policy right now. So, and you can see it does not take long to create it. I do a refresh and oops, it showed up there. Just give it a sec to show up here. Disappeared on me, showed up quickly and then disappeared. Let me go out and back in here real quick. There we go. And there we are. And created today, Global Azure Day, day after May the 4th be with you, Cinco de Mayo. Let's go. So now I've got 3 policies that are off, and these are just default policies. And then I've got 4 that are on report only. What we're going to do now is we're going to go into what if, and we're going to test different criteria and what's going to take place on these policies. So I'm going to go to what if, and we've got users or service principals here. So you can see we can use a workload identity now. This is somewhat new. Used to be just users. I'm going to start by selecting myself and see how this works. So, and if you recall, the Global Azure policy that I created does not have, has me excluded. So I'm going to do workload, do myself. I'm going to use any cloud app right now and see what happens here. I'm going to leave device profile and IP addresses out of the loop here. And I'm just going to, so it's just me and any cloud app right now and any IP address and any device. And I'm going to select what if. And in a moment or two, this comes through here. And it shows what I've got here is if I'm using an Android device, I'm going to get my access blocked. I have some policies here that will not apply, though. The Global Azure policy is not going to be in effect because I did not name any specific applications, as well as I'm excluded from that policy. Allowing access to Office 365. I didn't define any mobile devices, and this is another mobile device one. Trusted location. I didn't define an IP address. Which my trusted location is actually my IP address. But if I go back now and I reset, and still have me set up as the user, it looks like. If I go in here and I select, let me select Office 365 alone by itself. Oh, this says nobody selected, so I'll select myself again. Okay, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do an iOS device platform and do what if for that one. Oh, shoot. Let me go just start over here. Actually, let me pick this user here and do what if on that one. Okay, and so no policies are on this iOS device platform. Live demos, gotta love them. Let me select stream. And I'm going to remove Office. So let me see what happens here. And there we go. Okay. So so what I found here is a conflict in my policies. So I had Office 365 selected, and it said none of the policies applied on iOS because I have Office 365 in this policy. If I go to this policy now and I go and look at my my conditions here, I have iOS in this condition here, and this is an allow policy rather than. So what I've got is a conflict. So what I can go in here for Office 365 is what I'll do is I'll deselect iOS in this policy and just leave it at Windows devices. And if I was then to do what if on this one, it still's got the global Azure policy. That's the case. If I go in here and select Office 365 and do what if, I should have my other policy show up. No. Okay, let me remove this one. And if I do Windows devices on this, no policies for this one. So this one's not working quite right. If I go, let me select oh, I know why, because it's not under this particular user. It's not all users, it's just myself. So sorry. That's where my conflict is coming in here. If I go in, let me go back to that Office 365 policy and let me do all users and exclude myself. And I have my emergency brake class account. You can see I have excluded that in this one. Let me fix this now. All right. All right. I updated that policy. So now if I run this on any device platform, let's see what happens here. Got the deny Azure, got trusted locations. If I come in here, do Windows, I'm getting no policy still. If I do iOS, oh, sorry, I'd lost my stream in here. I got my global Azure policy. If I do stream and I do those policies in there. So if I go in here, and some of these changes might not have come in, deny access with these, I've got all users on this one. So that's why. So if I go in to what if and select Android, I'm going to have the deny access to Android devices. So you can see it's a very powerful tool to help you to find where you might have misconfigured a policy. So if you should know as you plan and plan your zero trust environment, plan your identity and access environment for conditional access policies, you should understand and have an idea of what this policy that I'm creating is going to do, and should be somewhat explicit in even the policy name, that deny access from Android devices, or access from trusted location, or allow access to Office 365. I wasn't very descriptive with global Azure policy. You don't really know what that's supposed to do. So if somebody that didn't create it comes in behind you, they can't really do the testing on it. So be explicit in your naming convention, and then go through, put it on report only, and then test your policy over and over to understand why these are, and it'll show you why this doesn't apply necessarily in here as well, so that you can kind of go, okay, users and groups, that this policy is only with my username, so can't really go through and test that. And you can go through and test on various users, and go from there with your what if testing, and go through and test your policies. Always test your policies, and what if is the best way to see where there's conflicts. There might be conflicts where we might be blocking an Android device, but we want to allow an Android device for a specific application. So that we have a conflicting policies that don't know what to do. And if that happens, that's where it's going to show up in that why that policy isn't relevant. And then you can run through, you can make those adjustments like I did. You can click right within what if into the policy, make edits to the policy, save those changes, run the what if again, make sure it's working properly, and then you can move on. And then you can go into that policy and turn it on once you've gone through and done all your due diligence and due care and testing. So those are just some ways that you can use that what if feature. I think it's a little, kind of one of those kind of secret features that we don't really think about a whole lot. But if you're using conditional access and really building your organization with a zero trust methodology, we should be using conditional access policies on Azure Active Directory, on all of our apps and resources, and users and devices, so that we can properly enforce and protect our environment. And that ends and you can see we went through really all these steps in this workflow, and then really tested everything, and then we can really put things back into perspective and into the right buckets and the right requirements that we have within our organization. So to wrap things up, we went through zero trust principles. We went through the elements of zero trust. Remember, it's not just identity, even though that's the area that we covered here in this session. What are conditional access policies, and how we can put conditional access policies in place and test them with the what if feature before we enable them for production. Just like if we're developers, we want to test everything before we implement it. Conditional access is no different. And the big reason why is once you start putting conditional access policies in place, you're going to start enforcing things that might block certain users that we might not want to block. So, we want to make sure that if and always good, with the exclusions, you can exclude certain groups, exclude your IT, so that you can go through and test properly and things like that. So quick thing, special offer, part of Global Azure is 25% off my Identity and Access Administrator exam guide. I'm going to put that in the comments here for everybody to access. Let me make sure I'm going into and can put it in here on YouTube, and let's see, it's not letting me put these comments in the other formats today, but let's actually let me see if I answer somebody's comments here. It's only coming through on the comments in YouTube. So if you want to go to the YouTube stream or the YouTube comments later on, hopefully this will be accessible. If not, you can go to the channel and review the and get to this slide and review the presentation so that you can get the 25% off. I'm also going to do a drawing and provide a signed copy of the book. Here's a hard copy of it. I'll send somebody a lucky participant that left comments in the comment section. I'll do a drawing here in the next day or so and reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, depending on where you're located, with get your address information to send that book to you. But thanks for attending this session. As I said before, I'm doing this Global Azure session on behalf of Give Me Cloud Talks, which I co-organize. GiveMeCloudTalks.com if you want to participate or be in the attend any future sessions or be a part of any of the sessions. There is a call for speakers on there. Some updates from our organizers. Have Azure Back to School, which is my annual event, AzureBackToSchool.com. I have a call for papers and call for speakers for that event. I will be doing Sci-Fi DevCon next week, which my co-organizer and fellow MVP Brian Gorman is hosting. It's a fun month-long event of topics, a topic every day around sci-fi, whether it's Star Wars or Avengers or DC or Star Trek. There's generally a theme to every one of the presentations. I'm doing 2 presentations next week. I will also be speaking at the Azure Sweden user group on Saturday, May 14th. As I stated, Brian Gorman has a great event. Go to sci-fi-devcon.com. You can catch up on sessions that were presented the first 4 days of the month, as well as there's a new one today and going every day this month. Microsoft's Shannon Keene is doing a video series with fellow MVP Shehbaz Dar on his I Am IT Geek channel. So if you go to YouTube and go to I Am IT Geek, you can find those sessions on identity governance. I think they're on the 3rd or 4th video on that series. And Nick Collier and Brett Bozek are doing some major updates on their Skylines Academy platform for the new Azure certifications and and changes to certifications. So certainly check those out as well. And I want to thank everybody for their time today. Again, feel free to reach out to me. Go browse my blog site. Connect with me on LinkedIn, as well as follow me on Twitter. Happy to assist you in any way, any questions that you may have. I certainly am open to communicate with anybody that has some valid questions around Azure, Microsoft 365, security, compliance, and identity. Diving more into AWS as well, and not want to promote that too much on a global Azure session, but certainly have some multi-cloud capabilities, even though I'm very much lean towards the Azure and Microsoft area. So thanks everybody, appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this session. Again, you can follow along on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube today. If you want to go to my YouTube channel, I've got 3 more sessions today. I'm on U.S. Eastern time. They come up at 1:30, 2:30, and 3:45 this afternoon. Next up is going to be around responsible AI and data for public entities. Then I'll be talking. My last sessions are Microsoft Defender for cloud in a hybrid environment, and then modern authentication. So a little bit of what we talked about here in this session, but go a lot deeper into passwordless and privileged identity, privileged access, and things like that in the final session that I'll be providing today. So thanks everybody for your time today. I will end the broadcast, but stay on the chat if anybody has any questions. But I really thanks everybody for your time today, and hope you enjoyed the session. Have a great day.